Jewish astrology. Astrology in Jewish antiquity Hebrew, mzlvt equals mazalot, is the belief that celestial bodies can influence the affairs of individuals and of entire nations upon the earth. This involves the study of their respective energies based on recurring patterns that change by the hour, by the week, month, year, or by several years' time categories. In each of these time categories, one of the seven planetary spheres, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, Saturn, Jupiter, or Mars, along with the month's current zodiac constellation, come into play and influence the sublunary world. At times, it involves a complex combination of several of these factors working together. In Judaism, this belief is expressed by the biblical affirmation, "Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in earth?" Job 38:33, from which statement the sages have inferred, there is no single herb below without its corresponding star above that beats upon it and commands it to grow, complementary to the records of past rabbinic belief. In the Babylonian Talmud, a controversy is presented among the sages of Israel as to whether the zodiac signs affect a person's destiny. The supportive opinions are of Rabbi Joshua, the son of Levi, who lists the types of people according to the various zodiac signs, and of Rabbi Hanina, who believes that the astrological constellations mazal can make a person wise and can even make a person wealthy. Contrary to this view, there is Rabbi Yohanan's view that Israel is not bound by the effects of the changing horoscopes, who essayed to bring proof from a verse taken from the prophet Jeremiah, "Learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them." The opinions of Rab Samuel and of Rabbi Akiva, however, seem to be supportive of applied astrology, even though the people of Israel are not bound by the influences of the constellations. Other rabbis have vaunted their knowledge of applied astrology. Said Samuel, "I know the pathways of heaven as I do the pathways of Nehardia, excepting the comet, about which I know nothing." Elsewhere, said Rab Samuel bar Abba, "I am familiar with the streets of the firmament in heaven just as I am familiar with the streets of Nehardia." Rabbi Zutra bar Tobiah said in Rab's name, "He that is able to calculate the precession of the equinoxes Heb, Tekufat, and astrological horoscopes Heb mazalot, but does not, one may have no conversation with him." Rabakah 350c says, "Duration of life, progeny, and subsistence are dependent upon the constellations." Rabbi Judah Halevy also acknowledges in his magnum opus, Sefer HaKuzari, that the celestial bodies have an influence on earthly affairs, but does not admit that the astrologers have the ability to determine the mode of operation of the star systems on human beings and other living creatures in the terrestrial world. Maimonides 1138-1204, in his day, took a more critical approach to the topic of astrology, ruling that man was entirely incapable of foretelling futurities by observing the celestial bodies, especially if those same astrological formulae were faulty. He, therefore, cancelled its practice altogether. Among the early rabbis, Maimonides was the sole rabbinic antagonist of such practices. One of his contemporaries and disputants, Abraham ben David of Pasquiers, in his glosses to Maimonides' Mishneh Torah Hill, Teshuvah 5:5, asserts the influence of the stars upon destiny, while contending that by faith in God man may overcome this influence. Moshe Mlazato 17:07-1746, though never actually having used his knowledge of the occult to foretell futurities, speaks about the influences of the stars in his book, Derek Hashem Roman 2, Chapter 7, The Influence of Stars. Prescription against idolatry. The rabbis have distinguished between gaining an occult knowledge of the stars' influences on human beings, which is permitted, and the actual worshipping of the stars, which is prohibited, a view that is also met with the scripture. Cf. The stars and all the host of heaven which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations. Jude 4:19, that is to say, the stars which God appointed to be the means of governing his creatures, and not the objects of man's worship. The Midrash HaGadol on Deuteronomy 4:19 clarifies what is meant by, "and beware lest you raise your eyes to heaven," etc. It is hereby inferred that you are not to say, since these stars and constellations govern the world, and they provide light unto the entire universe, and they serve before their Creator on high, it is fitting that we serve them and bow down unto them, just as the king would want all human beings to behave with respect towards his servants and ministers. For this reason it says, lest you raise your eyes to heaven, beware that you do not err in this manner, on account of what is written, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations. They, i.e., the astrological horoscopes, have been delivered into the hands of the nations, so that they may live thereby, and their beings be sustained thereby, without suffering loss, as is the custom of the world. But you, i.e., the nation of Israel, have been given over to me, and I do not behave towards you as is customarily practiced with all the world, as it says, but the Lord has taken you. Deut. 4:20, etc. Likewise he says, learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them. Jer. 10:2. The nations of the world are alarmed by them, but Israel is not alarmed by them. A similar theme is found in other rabbinic literature concerning Abraham the patriarch, who, although wise in the astrological sciences, and who saw thereby that he would not beget any children, was reprimanded by God, who said to him, break away from your astrological speculations, for the people of Israel are not bound by the influences of the horoscope. By this Rashi learnt that through prayers, repentance, and meritorious deeds, sometimes also through a change of name, they are able to alter what has been determined for them. The people of Israel are prohibited by Jewish law to consult the astrologers and star-gazers for guidance, but are commanded to be perfect in their awe of God and to consult him for guidance, even when they are told by astrologers what might happen. Astral influences and how they are determined. The day is divided into 12 equal hours. The night likewise is divided into 12 equal hours. In both cases, the method of configuration used in measuring the hour is known as the relative hour. To determine the length of each relative hour, one needs but simply know two variables: the precise time of sunrise and the precise time of sunset. Although in Talmudic literature one begins to reckon the beginning of a day some 72 minutes before sunrise, and where each day ends 13:1/2 minutes after the sun has already set, here, in the case of astrological computations, it was only necessary to reckon the day from the moment of sunrise. Rashi, however, alludes to the day beginning at dawn mvdhshkhr. By collecting the total number of minutes in any given day from daylight hours and dividing the total number of minutes by 12, the quotient that one is left with is the number of minutes to each hour. In summer months, when the days are long, the length of each hour during daytime can be as much as 77 minutes or more, whereas the length of each hour during nighttime can be less than 42 minutes. To each hour of the day and night is assigned one of the 7 planets or spheres, which same planet governs the world during that hour. The names of these planets are Saturn Shabtai, Venus Naga, Jupiter Tzedek, Mercury Kakov, Mars Madam, Moon Levana, and the Sun Hama. Note, the ancients knew these as the 7 primary stars, orbs, planets. The Moon, although a satellite rather than a planet, was also numbered among them. The Sun, which is a star rather than a planet, was also numbered among them. The Earth was not numbered among them, since it was central to the rest, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as well as the other recently discovered. The 12 constellations are the result of the seasonal movement of the stars. Each of the 7 planets are subordinate to the 12 constellations of the Zodiac and work in conjunction with them. For example, the Sun is directly subservient to the influences emanating from the constellation known as Leo, while the Moon is subservient to the influences emanating from the constellation known as Cancer. Mars is subservient to the influences emanating from 2 constellations, namely Aries and Scorpio. The planet Venus is also subservient to the influences emanating from 2 constellations, namely Taurus and Libra. The planet Mercury is likewise subservient to 2 constellations, drawing its influences from them, namely that of Gemini and Virgo. The planet Saturn is subservient to 2 constellations, those being Capricorn and Aquarius, whence it draws its influences. Finally, the planet Jupiter is directly subordinate to the influences emanating from Sagittarius and Pisces. Weekly duties by night, each of the 7 planets takes turn governing one day of the week, with the active involvement of all the planets on that same day working in concert, hour after hour, day by day, night by night, such that on the evening that commences Sunday, i.e. Saturday night, the night is governed by Mercury Kakov, which begins its turn of duty. On the evening that commences Monday, i.e. Sunday night, the night is governed by Jupiter Zodiac, which begins its turn of duty in the first hour of the night, followed by all the other planets one after the other. And so it is in this manner all throughout the week. The evening that commences Tuesday, i.e. Monday night, is governed by Venus Naga. The evening that commences Wednesday, i.e. Tuesday night, is governed by Saturn Shabdai. The evening that commences Thursday, i.e. Wednesday night, is governed by the Sun Hama. The evening that commences Friday, i.e. Thursday. The mnemonic used to denote this order is KTS and SHKHLM. Hourly duties. Since each planet takes its turn of duty in the 12-hour night, the order taken in their hourly rotation is as follows. When Mercury Kakov finishes the first hour of the night, it is joined by the moon Lavana, who takes up the second hour of the night, followed by Saturn Shabtai, who takes up the third hour of the night, followed by Jupiter Zodiac. This hourly rotation is denoted by the mnemonic KLSHTS and KHM. Fixing their rotation in such a way, hour by hour, was seen as vital in order to determine the character of the child who is born at any given hour of the night, based on the hours acting mazal astrological influence in accordance with the principle laid out by Rabbi Hanina. Not the constellation of the day, but that of the hour is the determining influence. Weekly duties by day, as in the night. However, the planet that began to serve in the first hour of the night is not the same planet that begins in the first hour of the day. During the weekdays, the first hour of the first day of the week, Sunday, starts with the influences of the sun, hence, Sunday, the first hour of the second day of the week, Monday, starts with the influences of the moon, hence Monday, the first hour of the third day of the week, Tuesday, with Mars, and the first hour of the fourth day of the week, Wednesday, with Mercury, while the first hour. The mnemonic used to denote this order is KHLM, KTS, and SH. Hourly duties. When the sun finishes the first hour of the day on Sunday, it is joined by Venus, who takes up the second hour of the day on Sunday, followed by Mercury, who takes up the third hour of the day on Sunday, followed by the moon, whose influence takes up the fourth hour of the day on Sunday, followed by Saturn, who takes up the fifth hour of the day on Sunday, followed by Jupiter, who takes up the sixth hour of the day. Again, fixing their rotation in such a way, hour by hour, was seen as vital in order to determine the character of the child who is born at any given hour of the day. The mnemonic used by the sages of Israel to remember their order of rotation is SHGSMKHNKL equals Shah TZAM Ha and Ka El Shabtai equals Saturn Tzedek equals Jupiter Madam equals. Although each of the 7 planets will rotate one after the other on an hourly basis, whether by day or whether by night, it is only the planet or orb that began to serve in the first hour, whether by day or whether by night, that is considered the principal planet and master of that entire day. The participation of all the other planets on that same day or that same night is inconsequential to the fact that the mazal equals astral influences for that day, or what is called mazal yom, belongs to the planet that began serving in the first hour of the day or in the first hour of the night, while the other planets are only concerned with their specific hour, or what is called mazal. Since the moon begins its turn of duty in the first hour of every Monday morning, and Jupiter begins its turn of duty in the first hour of every Thursday morning, and since both these planets are considered planets possessing good influences, it follows that Mondays and Thursdays are considered auspicious days in the Jewish calendar. Energies emanating from the 7 classical planets. Other factors taken into consideration. To accurately determine the time in which each of the 7 planets are in their respective line of duty per hour, one must either have access to a printed lunar calendar showing the Jewish months and know the precise starting point for each day and night, or else be familiar with the ever-changing aspects of the Jewish months, as the planetary influences will change with the conjunction of the moon with events attributed to the influences of the constellations. In Jewish thought, the destruction of both the first and second temples, which happened in the lunar month of Av, is linked to the astrological influences of Leo Ari, which are generally considered to be bad. For this reason, the use of the rabbinic dictum, when Ev ushers in happiness, is diminished. Hebrew, MSHNKNSBMMTNBSHMKHH, is commonly heard in the mouths of the Jewish people. The month is marked by the 9th of Ev Tisha B'Av fast day. During the same lunar month, and its astral influences, the Jewish populace of Beitar met their destruction under the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century CE. King Edward I of England issued his decree Edict of Expulsion on 18 July in the year 1290 CE, a date corresponding with the 9th day of the lunar month when the month's influences were under the sign of the outbreak of World War I began on 28 July 1914, a date corresponding with the 5th day of the lunar month Av when the month's influences were under the sign of the Zodiac Leo, the Austro-Hungarian Empire having then declared war on Serbia. On the 7th day of the lunar month Av, Russia joined the war. On the 9th day of the lunar month Av, Germany joined the war. Kabbalist and Rabbi Hayim Vital 1542-1620 has explained the 7 classical planets in a more conceptual and esoteric sense. While ranking 10 spheres realms Hebrew Geelglim from the highest to the lowest, he describes the 9th sphere as having nothing in it, and which rejects the presence of any star. As for the 8th sphere Hebrew GLGLHSH, he states that all the stars of the universe with the 12 constellations of the Zodiac are contained therein, being below the 9th sphere, while each of the 7 classical planets occupies a space or realm below them. In the 7th sphere there is only one planet, Saturn Shabtai. In the 6th sphere, Hayim Vital does not speak about their physical distance in relation to the Earth, seeing that, besides the Moon a satellite, the planet Venus is the closest planet physically to the Earth. Rather, everything is expressed in relative spiritual distances by virtue of their rank. Hayim Vital, when speaking of their relative influences, wrote, "It has already been explained in the books on the science of astrology that all the changing occurrences which take place and which appear anew in the world, they are in accordance with the encounter of one of the 7 planets standing in proximity to a certain star Hebrew MZL of the 12 astrological constellations Hebrew M. The author of this work, without divulging the influences of the horoscopes, names simply those things created by means of the letters, naming also the weekdays, 7 groupings of words, and their opposites life and death, peace and evil, disturbances, wisdom and foolishness, wealth and poverty, fertility and desolation, beauty and ugliness, according to Judah Halevy, the 7 planets and the 12 constellations, and the various other examples mentioned in the book, are the means by which man is capable of understanding the unity and omnipotence of God, which are multiform on one side and yet uniform on the other." Fatalism. While astrology in Jewish thought is generally acknowledged to mean that every happening related to man, whether small or great, has been delivered into the power of the stars by the blessed Creator, it still allows for self-determination and free will of the individual in what concerns his choice of right and wrong actions, in spite of fate governing other aspects of man's life. This is expressed by the rabbinic dictum, "Everything is determined by heaven, except one's fear of heaven," meaning everything in a person's life is predetermined by God except that person's choice to be either good or bad, righteous or wicked, which is left up entirely to his own free will. Under this principle, as articulated by 13th century rabbinic scholar Menachem Meri, a man that is born under the influences of Mars will have a natural inclination to shed blood, and if he were the son of a king born under the same Martian influence, he will grow up to wage wars on other countries, and when victorious, he will sentence the defeated enemy to be executed. Even so, an ordinary man, that is born under such influences should be instructed to take up the profession of ritual slaughter, or livestock butcher, or similar skill crafts, e.g. mohel. So, too, with all the other signs of the zodiac which incline to a certain unwanted trait, man is able to choose between right and wrong, and between good and bad,